Hello, welcome to Sparks 1524 and a three-part look at the Battle of Gettysburg. I'm Nathaniel Miller coming to you from Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. Today is July 1st, 2021. 158 years ago today, on July 1st, 1863, the biggest, most bloody battle ever to occur on North American soil began here in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. This was a battle that Confederate General Robert E. Lee did not want, although it did become the culmination of his second invasion of the North. This was the first battle in which he was soundly defeated, and in fact his mystique of invincibility was broken here by Union Major General George Meade. George Meade became the first man ever to defeat the seemingly unbeatable Robert E. Lee, helping to change the course of American history. Now, like every other battle, there's a big, broad brushstroke of what happened here. You had the armies clashing. The Confederates had come up from the south, came around to the north, down into Gettysburg. The Union came up from the south into Gettysburg. The two met. On July 1st, the Confederates actually won the day and pushed the Union all the way through town. It's a little known fact because most people associate the battle with only the grounds of the National Park, which are just outside of town. But Gettysburg itself was an urban battlefield for well over 24 hours and saw some of the most vicious fighting of the 19th century. The Gettysburg National Military Park Visitor Center is a great place to get orientated, especially if you've never been to Gettysburg before. The modern facility opened in 2008, replacing an older building. The Visitor Center Museum features the entire history of the Civil War, not just the Battle of Gettysburg. You'll find both traditional and interactive exhibits here. One highlight is the Gettysburg Cyclorama, a 360-degree painting depicting Pickett's charge on July 3, 1863. Painted by French artist Paul Philippe Pitot in the late 19th century, the 100-yard-long painting took over a year to complete and is one of the museum's key artifacts. As I said, on July 1st, 1863, Confederate forces were sweeping across the fields of battle, pushing the Union toward and later through Gettysburg itself, apparently setting themselves up for imminent success. However, a look at a couple of points on the first day's battlefield not only will humanize the struggle, but also foreshadows the Confederates' ultimate loss on July 3rd, despite their position seeming so strong. By 11 a.m., a number of Confederates had taken refuge in this railroad cut, but the Confederates realized too late that it was far too deep to be used as anything but a self-imposed trap. The Union's 6th Wisconsin, the famous Iron Brigade, pinned the Confederates down, forcing the surrender of the Southern forces here and preventing a flank attack on the Union that might have destroyed all Union hopes for holding any sort of line. The scope of the disaster for the Confederates at the railroad cut can be seen by the fact that Union Colonel Rufus Dawes with the 6th Wisconsin, part of the Iron Brigade, was left juggling 7 sabers that had been presented to him by the surrendering Confederate forces. Iverson's Pits are a little-known area of devastation on Oak Hill, the extreme right of the Union line and the last point the Union held before being forced to retreat through the town itself. Confederate Brigadier General Alfred Iverson, so overconfident that he didn't bother to reconnoiter the ground or even lead his men in person, sent his North Carolina soldiers forward to what he assumed was permanent, eternal military glory. Well, he sent them forward to eternity, all right. The Union forces had lined up behind a low stone wall, and as the Confederates got near, the Union forces stood up and mowed down the Confederates with all the efficiency of a lawnmower. The North Carolinians were buried on site in long pits, Iverson's Pits, until they were reinterred years later. For decades after the war, farmers cultivating this area of wheat field always said the wheat here grew higher and healthier than anywhere else on the field. One of my favorite parts of any battlefield tour is a chance to take a ghost tour. Straight up, I do believe in ghosts, but ghost tours are good spooky fun, and I learned a long time ago that you find out a lot of local history through ghost tours that you're just not going to learn anywhere else. For example, during my first ever ghost tour, which was, over 15 years ago now, but it was here in Gettysburg, I learned more about Civil War surgery during that one tour than I did doing any of the classes for my master's degree, and I learned a lot about the local lore here in Gettysburg and what the local residents went through. Well, tonight I took a tour hosted by the Gettysburg Paranormal Society, and one of our stops was the Rupp House. Now, the Rupp House in 1863 was just outside the southern edge of Gettysburg. The original house has been added onto since, primarily in the late 1880s, but the original part of the house that was here during the battle is still there. This house was part of the urban fighting I described earlier, where you had Union soldiers literally on the front porch, Confederate soldiers on the back porch, and they were firing through the house while the Rupp family was hiding in the basement. Like every other surviving structure from the battle, the Rupp House became a field hospital, and the later addition to the house, which is the front side that visitors see today from the street, stands on ground where the dying and the grievously wounded were laid out there. In this photograph, you can see the old and the new portions of the Rupp House. The original portion that existed during the Civil War is on the far right and has that big floodlight hanging off it. During the ghost tour I was on, the uppermost attic windows were completely dark to all of us as we listened to Scott, our tour guide. Trust me, we were looking because he was pointing up at those windows and explaining some of the different things people have reported seeing over the years. I, of course, was taking photographs and listening to his tales of the Rupp family. When I got back and downloaded my images, I discovered a blue glow in that upper right attic window. Make of it what you will, but there was no visible light in that window while we were there. Visiting any battlefield can be a very exciting time because exciting events happened here. You had great battles, and many of them we would consider fights of good versus evil. The ramifications of the Battle of Gettysburg itself, in fact, of the entire Civil War, are still shaping our culture today. Many of the cultural conflicts and debates we're going through were the same ones that led to the Civil War happening in the first place. However, it's easy to overlook the fact that these great battles and great controversies are enacted, survived, and suffered by living people. Taking the time after you get orientated to the whole story to pick out one or two places like Iverson's Pits or the Railroad Cut or even the Rupp House. Go learn those specific stories, get to know those people, and the whole battle becomes humanized. It comes down to a scale that you can understand, and then have a new appreciation of why these men and in later generations women were fighting and what they were fighting for. Tomorrow, on day 2 of the 150th anniversary, we'll be taking a look at a small, obscure hill, where, in one of the rare events in history, the fate of the nation literally turned on the actions of an obscure colonel on that hill. If you'd like to read more about my adventures, my column on part 1 of this anniversary is linked below. Also, the National Park Service Visitor Center website is linked below if you care to check them out. Finally, the Gettysburg Paranormal Society ghost tour that I took is also linked below. Even if you don't believe in ghosts, ghost tours are a lot of spooky fun and they're a great way to learn a lot of local lore. Until we meet next time, I ask you to please hit that little like button. Feel free to share this if you find it of value. And in the meantime, go and do great things.